All right, our recording is up and running. Welcome, everybody. Tonight, we have David from Cards is going to lead our conversation about postseason, summer, off-season activities, and how we keep our students engaged, or how do we help engage students be productive. David, the floor is yours. I'll let you take it from there. And there's the bus. There's the KnightKrawler bus. Hi, guys.
I was going to say, we do have video of the bus now. They all look like they have energy, so they've probably been sleeping for quite. I guess that's it.
I was saying earlier before everybody piled on here that the KnightKrawler Slack thread went crazy today with all the things they want to do over the summer. So maybe someone will chime in with some of that conversation. All right, go ahead, David. The floor is yours. Take it away.
All right. Well, with what do we got? We got a fairly small group. I had put together kind of a guided, similar to what Michael had done for those of you that were on last week. But with a smaller group, I actually think it might be easier to have an more open conversation with 13, 14 people. Really, we've never really done spring. You guys haven't done much. They fairly drop off fairly well, and the students want to do more over summer. So I was kind of curious on what teams have done and seen success with, what teams have done and not seen so much success with and learned from, and kind of have an open conversation with everybody to see what useful information we all might get from each other to create a good, productive summer program, or spring and summer program for our students. I do have a few guided questions if we want to go that route. I guess actually with a small group, I wouldn't mind doing a round of introductions as well, since that seemed to work out well. I'm Dave Jackson with 7850 Cards in Coon Rapids. Jaredin is off in the background, my son and one of the members of the team. I'm a first-year mentor of the team. And then I'll just kind of go down alphabetically. If everybody could just kind of introduce themselves, what team they're with, and then, you know what, something you learned over this season, just as something nice. I'd say one of the things I've learned over the season is it is amazing how much self-learning can happen in young students. Eric, if you don't mind.
Yes, I'm Eric Schaefer from Talon Robotics. I'm a programming mentor there. I've been mentoring for like 17 years. What's interesting programming-wise is a change that happened this year, and that's all previous students coming in to high school had some script programming capability, and because FRC has changed, so they're now graphics programming, there is not one student coming in this year or our freshman year that actually had any knowledge of script programming. So it's a new leap here to just from a instructional standpoint.
Might help if I unmute myself. Jeremy?
Hello, I'm Jeremy with 2181 Gears up in Blaine. Hello, Cards. I'm one of the head coaches there. This was my second season with Blaine. I've also mentored another team up in Alexandria before. What did I learn this year? That is such a good question. Don't use hollow 2x1 max tube as your frame perimeter. Make sure you put something in it, because we did an under the bumper intake and it got smashed at Duluth, basically in half. So lesson learned there. Swerve was new for us, so we were trying some things out, but won't do that one again. So
Jonathan.
Good evening. John Stratus with the Robettes. Been with them since the beginning. I'd say biggest learning for me is actually probably about to happen. We just put out a survey to the team regarding how everyone is asking them to rate everyone else on how they fit in with our core values. And it's giving some interesting results that we're going to have to figure out how to feed back into the team to improve things for next year. It's the first time we've done something like this, so it should be pretty interesting.
I'd definitely be interested to hear how that turns out for you. Lana.
Well, Luna's on the bus, so that's one of the KnightKrawler students.
All right. I was going to say, all right. Pixel?
Hello. I should have joined on my school account, but I'm Philip Gunderson, lead programmer of 7850, soon to kind of be part of the whole programming team that we've got going on since last year. We had to kind of start our programming team from fresh, since everybody was pretty much a senior the year before I joined, which was this one. But this year, I pretty much went from very little scripting coding experience whatsoever, some in game development tools like Roblox and some Lua, to kind of getting really familiar with the Java and getting really familiar with the WPI Lib library. And that was just something I really clung to this year, and I really hope to continue for my senior year next year, where I really hope to make improvements to the team.
Sam.
Hi, Sam Wieselman, 2847 out of Fairmont. This is my, 7th year as the lead mentor there. What did I learn this year? I don't know, a lot of things. Maybe one is, if you want to do well, working every match is more important than doing fancy stuff. And then on the team culture side, probably, I guess I'm going to throw 2 in, is just be careful where you put your goals. If you put your goals on robot performance, you can have other side effects. So I'd love to talk more about that sometime too. So yeah, that's it for me.
Scott, I got a feeling most of the people know who you are, but I'd be curious to know what you learned.
Okay, Scott Davis, KnightKrawler 2052. What did I learn this year? I learned, and I feel like this is going to be a big part of our summer activities, is that April tags makes a lot of fancy driving and shooting possible, but it introduces way more issues than we've ever dealt with in the past. And we did not budget time-wise for the amount of effort it was going to take for us to be able to adequately use them. So I guess the takeaway for us as a team is going to be, how do we even further shorten up our build time to make sure that we have enough time with the programming team to make sure that, kind of to Sam's point, is you can make a nice fancy robot, but if it doesn't do what you want it to do, then it kind of doesn't matter. And so I think that dealing with April tags is further compresses our schedule and creates other challenges.
Stacy.
Good afternoon, or I guess good evening, everybody. I'm Stacy Foreman, a finance mentor for 2472. Our bus just rolled in earlier today, so if I don't make a lot of sense, it's because I was on a bus for 20 hours. We learned that things beyond our imagination are possible. for us to be able to go to Worlds. That was quite a bit of a surprise, and now how to get back. Like, how do we channel the energy that we have from the kids, the parents, the school, for that matter, toward building a bigger and better program in the future.
Right. Tyler.
Hey, I'm Taylor Noble, mentor for 2023. I think one small thing I learned this year is that our swerve is not nearly fast enough. It was hidden last year with all the tall robots and moving slow anyway, but it was a struggle this year.
Yeah, it is surprising how many fast robots there were out there, especially watching champs. Some of them were really scooting around. I will kind of just do a guided, as I said, guided discussion on, keeping kids engaged through spring and summer, to keep the development, keep the forward momentum going. It's definitely something that we've struggled with. I know last year, basically only a couple of kids were showing up to meetings after competition. Granted, half the team graduated. And then this year we're seeing a lot of students that are interested. Philip and Jaredon and several others are very interested in doing stuff over summer to keep developing going, to keep forward momentum going. So I guess start off with, what successes have teams seen during spring? Open conversation, just kind of some sub questions. How did you structure it? What percentage, or, was it a good percentage of the team, small percentage of the team that was active during the postseason? And what would you change this year? I guess if you're repeating something similar this year. Feel free to chime in.
I'll go ahead and kick it off. One of the things that we use our summer for is we select our captains for the team at the spring banquet at the end of the season. And so summer is a chance for our new captains to kind of grow into that role, get their feet wet, start putting to their plans in place, which a lot of times that captains come into the role saying, we need to change our training, or we need to improve our training, or we need to do something different. So the summer is a chance for them to start putting in place their plans for the fall when we bring in new students and we have to train them either in code or in tool training or camera, social media posting, things like that. So our students tend to spend a lot of their summer thinking about how they're going to manage their training and working with other students to try to get those plans in place. Some summers one summer we did swerve. That was, we sort of had a rule that we weren't going to do swerve in competition unless we had made it work during the summer. And so summer's a great time if you have a build team and a programming team that wants to add swerve to your team, or in the case of some teams that may have done it this year and struggle with it, summer's a great time to kind of improve that for their team. I feel like there's going to be a couple of students on our team that are going to want to build a turret and practice being able to drive and shoot with the turret. I've heard a lot of rumblings about that throughout the year. And so if we want to be good at that, I think that that's a good summer project. We also have a t-shirt cannon robot that just refuses to not happen in the summer. So we're constantly working on that crazy thing every summer. And I would anticipate there'll be more t-shirt cannon robot work this summer, despite the mentor's wishes that it would just be a single barrel cannon and we don't need a rotating, spinning 6-shooter. But it's a good project. It keeps kids busy, and they want to do it, so we let them do it. So I think two goals for us in the summer is get ready for the fall and give our captains a chance to sort of do that, and then do projects that will help the team in the future. And that's usually trying to do something we've never done before, or trying to improve on something that we struggled with the previous year. Those are our two biggest goals for the summer. And then we also do fundraising and farmers market fundraising and parades and other outreach events as well.
Do you guys do any particular set schedule or anything like that? Or is it kind of as stuff comes up?
We pick one night a week, and we meet one night a week during the summer. And so that way we have a schedule. The students and the families, they know what night is going to be robotics. And we let the captains decide. So we let our new captains decide that. Some of them already know that I always work on Wednesdays, or I always work on Fridays, or, my family's going to be doing certain things these weeks. And so Fridays won't work for me because I'm going to be out of town. So whatever it might be, we let the captains pick the day, and then the mentors, usually somebody can be there.
Last year, 2472 did a lot of those off-season things that you don't quite get to in the build season. So they redid the pit, tried cleaning out our robot room and organizing things and figuring out what we did have and what we would need to buy for the next year, and really getting on top of ordering for some things. Like we made the decision to buy Neos because they were available instead of trying to wait for other things. We just wanted to have stuff so we could go when build season came around. And they do a couple of community ed classes too. One for younger kids and one for more upper elementary. Brings in some funds and some good exposure in the community as well.
Stacy Jordan had a question for you.
Yeah, this is more of a question for everybody. I know our team, Cards, has really struggled with keeping people involved after competition. People seem to really stop showing up. How do teams kind of keep that momentum going, keep people showing up, keep people excited after competition's over? Because our team went from 20 people to now we have 8 people showing up after comp. It's kind of something that we struggle with, to keep people motivated and keep people coming in after a competition.
I can only talk about previous years. I don't know what the captains have planned for this year, but they've always been looking at a project, like they call it the demo bot. And that's the one that they might start with the swerve drive on. And it just keeps adding. It's they're trying to design a turret, they're trying to design a shooter, and all this sort of gets designed and built and played with all summer. So that's something that a project that keeps kids involved. So that's one of the things, is if you have a project going.
When do you start that conversation for that project? Does it start way before a competition? Like, we're going to do this after comp to get people like involved in it? Or does it start after the competition?
Well, this is a summer thing, so it's totally not dependent on competitions at all. It's just a project to get more kids involved in design and hands-on. It's a lot more laid back in such that we haven't completed one yet. So,
because I know. Sorry if I interrupted you. Our team was planning on doing a mini robot this year. It's a quarter scale of 2 years ago design of 2 years ago's game, to get people kind of involved in CAD and all of that. But people didn't really seem interested. So we tried to come up with tons of other projects to get people interested, but nothing really stuck.
Well, I can give you my piece of advice on getting people to show up. We just let anybody come that wants to come. I think in past years we've had anywhere from 5 people to 10 people show up on a 35 to 45 person team, and that's okay with us. I mean, the kids that want to be there, they're the ones that are going to get the most out of that time. What we don't want to do is we don't want to have a meeting where we have a bunch of people show up saying, what do I do? Because we want really summer for them. We want them to be sort of self-directed of, I'm here because I have a project that I want to work on. That's fantastic. And if somebody comes and says, well, how can I help? Or I want to do something, that's great. And they can find another student that they can work with to do things. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to have 20 students show up and have 15 of them with no project and nothing to do and standing around looking at the captains or the mentors for us to give them a task. We of course want to support them with whatever task they want to do, but if I think there's a good chance this summer we might have kids that are like, I want to work on LEDs for the pit. Like, awesome. What do we have to do to make that happen? And there'll be robot tasks, and there'll probably be some swerve code tasks and April code tasks, and those students that want to do that, will help them get that done. But summer is not a time for us to assign jobs for people that don't want to, they're just showing up without something of their own to do. At least that's the way we approach our summer meetings.
Yeah, Scott, we're very similar this past year. When we got into the summer and school was out, we put up a list of everything that we could possibly want to do that summer and accomplish, different projects and such on the whiteboard, and it stayed there the entire summer. And so when people came in, it was what project do you want to work on? Take something off the list, add something to the list if you have a passion, and go for it. But it was more, mentors were just there to assist as needed, not to provide that direction ourselves.
Yeah. Are you guys meeting on a regular once a week as well, similar to?
Yeah, we were meeting for 3 hours every Monday.
Okay.
In the summer, and that's been pretty standard for us for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, so we usually have regular meetings and open rooms when we have mentors. The other thing we have is a large amount of outreach we do during the summer. We go to community July 4th events, and we get a lot of kids involved. From the community, we could get more than 100 kids actually playing with the robot or running the robots in previous seasons. The other thing is we usually do a summer camp for grade schoolers, and then get a lot of kids involved in a lot of organization that different students are responsible for teaching different things and organize that. Other fundraisers, it's all student decided. Before the end of the season, or before summer, they start putting up what they envision they want to be doing in outreach. And usually we need a single student that is the lead for each. And then it's up to them to organize. The other outreach that I get involved with is with the IEEE picnic. And we actually give a half-hour presentation with our robot during it. It becomes their main event during the summer for IEEE. And then I always invite a second local school to bring their robot and talk too. So that's another thing we do during the summer. I know other teams have talked about getting involved in summer picnics with other companies. I don't know if anybody wants to talk about that.
Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I guess I'd say maybe the best advice I have for you is have the students kind of pick projects, or your student leads pick projects that they're interested in, and also try to tie in why it's important for future team success. So try to give them the context. So like for us, the one that we didn't get done was we wanted to do Swerve one summer, and that was, basically 22 into 23. So saying, this is going to take us to the next level, and the kids are really excited about that. I know this summer we're looking at, similar to what Scott said, looking at doing a turret potentially. We've never been good at elevators, so we're probably looking at making one of those really good. Potentially a rebuild of our bot to do an off season. And really, I don't know where we're going to land. It's kind of up to our new team captains, but they're going to kind of collect from the team and kind of work through that way. I guess that's kind of my suggestion, I guess, would be get something the kids want to work on, the rest of your teammates want to work on. And then as far as attendance, yeah, that's what we see too. 5 to 10 pretty dedicated students generally. Somewhere between 25% and half of the team show up to those in the summer. So, yeah.
Jordan, you got any other questions you got a crowd full of experience here to ask questions that can give you good advice.
I'm also presuming a lot of the teams get ready for the state fair. So that's another, I guess, highlight kids like. So I'm expecting some of the other teams here demonstrate there.
Yeah, I'd be curious how many teams are doing the presentation. I know Laura had said that she's tried it in the past and didn't get much interest from the team, but I think the team dynamic has changed.
Yeah.
So Tom, you're doing it.
KnightKrawler always does the robot demo day. We pick a weekend and go on one of those days.
Okay.
We went last year and our kids had a blast.
Just team up with Blaine. They're just right down the road.
If only I hadn't done the magnet school.
The Centurions go. I think this will be like our 5th year in a row, at least that I remember.
Yeah, Philip.
I'm actually not familiar with this robot demo day that we're talking about. If somebody could provide a quick explanation, because this sounds like a really fun thing.
The education building at the state fairgrounds, you can take your robot there and you leave it, and then you can sign up for a day. And I don't know if does anyone know, did they do the robot demos during the weekdays or is it only on the weekends?
3 every day of the whole fair.
Yep.
The whole fair. Okay. So, so you leave your robot there and then people can walk through and see all the robots, and then you come and you demo your robot 1 or 2. I think some teams do it 2 days. We only ever do it for 1 day. The unfortunate part, and this is a frustrating part for me, is you lose your robot for almost an entire month. And I grow really frustrated by that, because if you're trying to teach your kids some programming concepts or work on some new mechanisms for the off season, it's a month. I mean, the summer is not that long to begin with. And if you have mentors who are burnt out and they don't want to start summer meetings right away and they want to take some time off, pretty soon the next thing you know is you have 4 or 5 weeks, and then the state fair comes and you lose your robot for 3 to 4 weeks, and then you get it back and school starts. And so I think it's unfortunate that you have to bring in your robots so early to have them there. But that's the game you play if you want to demo at the state fair. Our students love it, though. I will say that, just like can't remember who else said this, but our students enjoy it. There's a robot parade. They push the robots down the street one of the days, so it's a good deal.
So with you guys bringing up you working on your robot over the summer, is that a common thing? Teams working on improving a robot over the summer?
It is for some teams. I know that Fire Bears, that's how they did Swerve. So they took Swerve chassis. They took their top of the robot off their tank drive from the previous year, plopped it on a Swerve drive, hooked everything up, and they played their 2 off-season events with Swerve drive. If you struggled a lot with your robot this year, you're like, man, I wish we would have done something different. Here, summer's a good opportunity for you to rebuild your intake mechanism to do something different. I feel like a 4-bar mechanism is a great thing to learn how to do, especially if you have a big packaging problem. And you're like, how do we get a 4-bar mechanism so that when it folds up, it's in this position, and then when it folds down, it can able to pick up? It's a great summer project because it takes a ton of math, takes a lot of CAD work. You'll have to CNC some parts a few different times to get it right. Good off-season projects. Like I already mentioned, Swerve's a good off-season project, but then it gives you a goal, because if you compete at MRI or Mini or EMCC or Gumi or any of these other off-season events, then it gives you a goal of, we got to get this thing working and before our off-season event starts, because that was our summer project, is we're going to learn how to do a 4-bar intake, or we're going to learn how to do a turret, or whatever it is your team is learning how to do. Not everybody does that, but some teams do. And you'll see them show up to a Mini or an MRI with a completely different robot than what they competed with the year before.
Just to add on to that a little bit, we installed beam brakes on our already, because we competed in Duluth, RIP, and no other ones. So we've had a lot of time. So we were using limit switches in Duluth. Don't use limit switches. And we swapped them out for beam brakes now. So even just that kind of small thing was a big thing for us who have not had experience with that kind of control system before. And it's a small thing, it took a couple hours, but it'll help next year.
Gave the students the experience and the knowledge, so now they're one step closer to whatever the challenge is. You got another question? Somebody raise their hand.
Yeah, I was going to say another one we're going to dive deep into is it's a good chance to revisit the fundamentals. So, I probably mentioned in my intro about some reliability stuff, and we're going to go through and say, how do we make sure our Swerve modules never break again? Like, that'll be a goal for next year. Never, ever, never, ever, ever. What do we have to do? And then we're going to do a deep dive on wiring too. We melted a power panel, and we kind of realized that we were doing some things that, I don't know, just because it turns on and runs in the shop does not mean it's competition ready. So we're gonna revisit those too, very likely. And so it's a really good chance to make those things, even document them, so that when it comes time to do it in the season, it's just follow the document. There's a team history, there's some institutional knowledge, and it's not necessarily a relearning thing. And now you just got that one less thing you can fail, and so that's maybe not the perfect thing, but it's something we're working on anyway.
Yeah, I mean, another project you guys talked about was taking the CTRE off the MK3 or the MK4s and going all rev.
Yeah, we wanted the Phoenix encoders and replace it with rev encoders on our CS. So another question I want to ask you guys is, when you do get new people, how do you go about training them on what they want to do? Because our team has really struggled on, we get someone new and they really want to learn coding. How do you guys teach them coding? Or they really want to learn CAD. How do you guys teach them CAD? Sorry, we're getting a little off.
No, I mean, this is a good conversation, I think, for everybody. Especially, we're a small team. What was it? 15 total?
It was, I think, 22 people that would semi-regularly show up in total.
And we don't have a large mentor group.
No, it's 3 mentors in total that aren't in college.
Oh, our off season, we have many sub team or subgroups, each with a lead. So we have a programming lead. Their job is to hold classes every week during off season, or when school starts all the way to build season. That's their job, or what they're attempting to do is teach the other kids an hour a week programming. The same thing with design. The design team, every week they're teaching CAD. The other thing we do with our team is all the tools in the room, everything from cutoffs to all the hand tools. Every student every student needs to do a sign off. So we have classes there that they have to have their hands on every tool and then get a sign off during the off season. And it seems like everybody's enthusiastic to be able to learn these things. So when it comes build season, if anybody needs to run anything, they then are prepared.
So Jeremy, sorry.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Oh, you can go.
I was going to ask another question. So you can go.
We have not done this, so this is me recommending something that we haven't even done. I just put it in the chat. It's like they call them First Robotics badges. So it's just, I think this was some teams in Michigan. Correct me if I'm wrong if someone knows. Killer Bees are on the list, so it has to be Michigan. They have 8 different categories, kind of, and then they have up to 1, 2, 3, 4 levels, and it just has some good ideas on like things, even just small tasks you can have the students do. Again, we have not implemented this yet, but I have some ideas on how to at least implement pieces of this maybe next fall. We had 13 or 14 ninth graders show up last fall every day, and that was really hard. That was a really big challenge. And then I actually had a baby in the middle of that, so that made it even more kind of like ridiculous. But so I'm trying to be more intentional this year about helping people find a spot that they're comfortable in, because we had people kind of going, all over the place, and they didn't kind of lean into anything. So my hope is a little bit more leaning in with some guidance like these. And for each one, you do have to download it as a zip file, but again, it just has some decent ideas on even just a basic, like, here's a way to get started. So there you
go. Who raised their hand? I don't have the queue open. I got the chat.
It's me. I was just going to say about programming. The NMRC, our conference, we offer a programming camp in the summer. So we take students, our programmers that are interested, for 2 days at BSU. And so that's how we get them started and introduced. And then after that, then they work with our lead programmer during the season, where after they're introduced, then they're more looking or starting to use the programming as the lead mentor kind of looks over their shoulder and does some guiding. But I think that offering that programming camp really does help for programming, per se, at least for our kids.
Yeah, that's definitely something I think we were challenged with this year. None of our mentors were very adverse in Java programming. Java is my least favorite language, and I don't program on a regular basis anymore in life, so it's even worse. I do have to say that Philip did definitely step up to the game with the little we had for him. Luckily, we had our returning student from last year that came in when he could, active in college. It was, Saturdays here and there when he could, but that's probably was one of our biggest this year.
So I have a question. On those teams that do weekly classes, our team tried to do that this year. I'm our engineering lead. I tried to do a CAD class it seemed that, well, I'm not the greatest teacher, I'll admit that to myself, but it seemed that team retention in the class wasn't very great. Like, they would prefer to goof off and they would prefer to do other things.
Focus, you mean?
Yeah, focus, like, get them in the class. How does teams deal with, like, having a fun activity or having something that people would want to come to and would want to actually learn? How do teams deal with that?
Well, did you have a CAD program that they could all run on their own computers?
No, we use Fusion 360, which we run on the school desktops.
Okay, that is something we had before. We were using SolidWorks, which could only run on our computer in the room. Our students decided that they would go to, was it Onshape? And then every student could then be working on their own computers instead, even though it wasn't as powerful, let's say. But then they could get assignments and actually get involved rather than having to share one computer.
Yeah, they were able to have, because we actually used one of our.
We have the Fab Lab in our school.
Fab Lab, which has desktops. So they each had their own desktop, but it wasn't something. Onshape would be nice because they could take it home and learn and.
Exactly. So they can all use their own school computers at home to do projects and learn, rather than having to be in the classroom with somebody else or have a dedicated time. It's just, it was a decision they made, and now the idea is getting more kids actually involved and interested. I don't know if this is answering your question.
No, it totally is. It's telling me that we kind of need to look at the kind of things that we're using versus our process, but our process definitely does need to be worked on. Thank you.
I will say too that we were in a similar boat. We were using SolidWorks for a number of years, and we would usually have one or two students that would do CAD. And when the pandemic happened and we were trying to figure out what are we going to have students do when they're at home, how do we run a robotics season, we switched to Onshape because we had some students who all they have is a Chromebook, and Onshape works even on a Chromebook. It'll work on an iPad. So we switched to Onshape, and I would say it's one of the best decisions that we have made in terms of switching platforms or tooling. Now we have students that are like, I don't have anything to do, and we're like, make us a trap mechanism. Now it turned out that we never really came up with anything good, but every single student could go make their own copy of the current robot CAD and have their own copy. They weren't worrying about messing up the official copy that our primary CAD student was in charge of. And they could go start monkeying with that CAD all they wanted. And then if they designed something really good, and we had that for the climbing teeth on our climber, we had that for the camera mounts, we had that for a few other 3D printed parts where students would make a copy of the CAD, they would design a thing, they would show that to a mentor, to our CAD lead, and then we would just import that. They would take their part off their copy and import it into the official robot part, and now they've got a part on the robot. Onshape has just made collaboration so simple. Instead of having to upload and download from GrabCAD or whatever it might be, everybody has access to the official robot CAD, and you have to be careful about different people messing up different parts and do a good job of using version history and things like that to be safe about it. But Onshape has been just a game changer for us in terms of collaboration. Now back to your training question. I can relate to this a little bit from lessons learned from programming training. I was primarily a programming mentor for a very long time. And the last 2 years, I've been focusing more on the CAD group. But I will say that we went through so many different iterations of how do we improve our programming training. And we tried a guide at your own pace programming through GitHub. So the wiki would have all the lessons in the wiki, and so you would clone the repo, which was a base code repo, and then you would start adding to it. You'd go through the wiki lessons. And we did that for basically teaching the core concepts of Java, not so much the core robot training. And what we found was that kids don't read, they copy and paste. And so they would copy and paste in code, and then they would say, this doesn't work. And it was because they had 6 main methods, because they just went and found all the code and copied in all the methods. And you're only allowed to have one method main in code. And so we were like, did you read this? And I'm like, well, no, I just pulled in the code. And I'm like, well, this is a lesson. It's not a copy paste. So then we went to the classroom model, which I think is what you're describing, where every week we would have classroom setting instruction. And that year we actually had the computer science teacher at the high school. She was mentoring, and she would, the whole season, she would just go through and she would teach computer science. And what we found is that not all of our kids can make every single meeting. And so as soon as you missed 1 or 2 meetings, you were so far behind, there was no way you were going to get caught up. And because there was no sort of instruction guide, it was not possible to get caught up. And so we had students that would miss a meeting and they would just completely get left behind. We tried a hybrid approach where we had a text-based, go at your own pace learning, and then one of our programming captains recorded videos to go along with that. He was never very happy with the quality of those video trainings that he had done, and so he didn't widely release it. And then if you want to tweak your instructions, it makes it even harder, because then you got to go back and re-record your videos to go with the new kind of training that you want to do. And it seems like every year our programming captains want to do things slightly differently, and so doing all that video prep makes it even harder when you start changing the curriculum a little bit. So I think what has worked the best for programming and also for CAD is to have a fixed set of online sort of tutorials you go through. So we send all of our programmers through codecademy.com, and they do up to classes. So they do the Java training through variables and conditional statements up to classes. And then we say, okay, once you get to classes, then come talk to a mentor or a captain, and we'll find the next thing to do. And sometimes that's, I'm going to say the magic word for Jeremy, mini trials. So we do mini trials in the fall, and we have kids that are programming kind of kit parts, chassis, and doing basic motor mechanisms. Or I guess one year we had pneumatics on a mini trials bot. And so we teach them hands-on how to code a robot. Other times we have Rami robots that we've had limited success with, but that's could be an option too. And so we kind of one-on-one work with those students to teach them some of those things, or sometimes 1-on-2. Maybe we can get 2 students that are at the same place and we can teach them at the same time. But it really becomes a kind of a hands-on, one-on-one once you teach them the basics of programming. We do something similar with CAD. We do sort of classroom instruction, and we'll do it 2 different nights for 2 different groups of students. So if you can't make the first one, then hopefully you can make the second one. And we have everyone in the room CAD a battery clip. So they CAD a battery clip, something that can be 3D printed. They can then learn how to run the 3D printer, and we can teach them how to use the calipers and do measurements in CAD a battery clip. And so we teach them the fundamental concepts of shapes and how you build shapes out, something to be 3D printed. And then after that, then we do a similar thing where we teach everybody, we put together a swerve chassis. So the nice part about it is if you use MKCAD, which is a plugin for Onshape, there's this huge library of basically everything Reb sells, everything Andy Mark sells, McMaster Cars, entire libraries in there. I think the SDS modules are all in there too. And so we teach people how to import parts, which you're just importing the SDS modules, and you select we're using Rev motors or we're using Krakens or Falcons, and you pick your module setup and plop, there's the swerve module. You go buy your max frame, max tube 1x2, you connect all those together, and we teach kids how to import parts and how to build an assembly. And then we make them use the skills they made for designing a from scratch battery clip to design bumpers. And then they have to design those bumpers and then attach them to their assembly. And that's a couple of weeks. That can largely be done in big groups, but it's also simple enough so that if someone misses a meeting, somebody in the room is probably far enough along that they can help that person figure out how to do all of those steps in CAD. So to summarize, I would say classroom learning only works if you can repeat it, and it's short enough that you can have someone kind of work with them one-on-one to get them caught up. And then after you get the basics laid out, the only training we've found that really works when you move into more advanced stuff is to do it sort of one-on-one or 1-on-2, and you lean on your veteran students to help you bring the new students along.
Jeremy? You had something? Oh.
I mentioned before we had a lot of ninth graders, and we tried to do some classroom type of stuff in the fall. I would say most of it did not stick. And then we opted in to the Kitbot this year. And the second they started taking parts that they felt like actually mattered, everyone flipped. Like the whole thing changed on kickoff, partly because they felt like they had a purpose. And I'm super excited. I hope that mini trials happens this year, but I'm super excited for something like that, which is a low stakes FRC game. But it's just really, really engaged both the leadership of the students, where adults try and stay as much hands off as humanly possible and have the returning students do a lot of the teaching, or again, as much as possible. And then have the newer students like do something that they feel like matters. I think that was the part we struggled with the most in the fall, was the mattering.
I guess we ventured a little off, but I think it was a useful conversation. So, and a lot of the training and stuff was stuff that they were talking about developing over summer. I know Philip had talked about developing a programming training and stuff like that. So I just kind of wanted to, because we haven't had great success, figure out how to make it semi-successful for them.
Sorry for leading us off course.
Oh, it's fine. I think it was well worth the conversation. And
from the Code Academy, is any specific courses that you're looking at that you recommend?
For KnightKrawler, we send them to the Java training, and I don't remember what lesson it stops at, but we basically send them up to classes, and then we stop at classes. We don't go into, inheritance or polymorphism or any of that stuff. There's so much in Java that we want to stop them before they dive deep into the stuff that very few robotics teams ever do. We do use inheritance. We do use interfaces. Sometimes we use singletons. You have to go so deep in the Java curriculum to hit those things. We usually stop them. All we really want out of the Code Academy is variables, control flow, which are, if statements and case statements. Some scoping. I think private versus public is probably covered in those early stages there. And then classes. There's probably a few other things that are along the way that are helpful. And realistically, you don't use loops. I mean, you almost never use loops in FRC programming. If you're doing some fancy autonomous code, maybe you're having an array of objects that you're looping through, or your vision processing might send you an array of objects it detected. But it's ironic that very few times you actually ever code a for loop or a while loop in FRC, because you're using the state machines, the game loop or the recurrence loop or whatever you call that. So we don't send them very deep, actually. Once they understand classes and methods, that's kind of where we tell them to stop, and then we shift over to something else related more to FRC.
any other conversations, I guess I'll open floor to anything.
Yeah, I have a question here. So last year, I think our team struggled with, especially with state happening 2 weeks after Worlds or whatever. How long of a break do you take before you start your summer? Because people have opinions on it. Have they had problems with not taking enough break, taking too long, losing momentum, holding momentum? Just get people's experience. I guess I'll share ours. I feel like last year we kind of went from state, got really fired up after that, and kind of jumped right into summer stuff. And I don't know if everyone really got a chance to catch their breath and think and plan, and it would have been better to take a couple weeks off and really think, what are we going to do when we're in the shop? How are we going to use shop time? What can we do to prep to use that shop time well? And not be, oh, we're motivated, let's show up, and then stare at each other and say, what do we do, right? Give the team leads, give the student leads some chance to develop into those leads and do some planning and things too. So I think, of course, this year we didn't qualify for Worlds or State, so we did get that break built in, but kind of looking long term or whatever, saying what fits for us, and kind of curious, open the floor to hear what other people have found works.
I will say that KnightKrawler, when I joined the team, had a rule that we took a month off. That turned out not to be very realistic in recent years. This year, it's not going to be realistic either because we have to move all the stuff that we need for the entire summer to a different school. So that's going to be sort of an interesting challenge of getting our shop cleaned up and organized, and then inventorying what we need to take to a new school to do all of our summer demos, all of our outreach, all of our fundraising. It's going to be a lot of stuff. And the students are talking about, if they want to do a build mechanism, then we got to take all of our raw materials, all of our polycarbonate aluminum with us. It could be a big challenge. And then we have parades that end up coming up pretty soon too. So we can't really take a whole month off. We end up robbing a lot of motors off old robots that we use in demos and parades, and we got to get those things put back together before our demos come up. So I don't know. I think that if we can take time off by June 1st, that will be as good of a break as we're going to get this year. We'll probably end up starting up early June, I would think, this year. I will say, though, that you made a comment about with Champs and State being so close together. Last year, our students came back from Champs and they were completely wiped out. Well, a dozen of them had COVID, but we came back and we got nothing done. We basically got nothing done between Champs and State. And in my opinion, it was a big problem because you kind of want to use momentum from Champs to go into State. In reality, Champs sucked all the life out of our students, and I don't know that that's going to happen this year, and I hope our robot's not terribly broken and we don't have to fix a lot of stuff. But it'll be interesting to see if this year is the same as last year, where we kind of limp into State, or if the kids are fired up and they come back from Champs with all these ideas of things they want to try to get done in the next week and a half.
Sounded like your Slack was blowing up from what you were saying earlier.
Yeah, one of the mentors was trying to get some ideas out of his brain on the plane ride, or I don't know I don't think he took the bus down with the students, but he was like, before I forget about this, and he dumped some things out there, and it was in the captain's channel, and our captains jumped on top of this. I want to try this, and can we do this, and could we buy this? And yeah, they were fired up for being on the tail end of a 22-hour bus ride. I was surprised that they were already thinking about next year. So I think the enthusiasm is probably there where it wasn't there last year. We'll see.
Go ahead, Natasha.
Yeah, I was just, since we're on whatever we want to talk about, I wanted to go back to what Jeremy was saying, why you said do not use limit switches and only use the beam brakes. Is there some advice you have behind that?
We use limit switches with the notes this year, and we broke, I think, 3 or 4 limit switches at Duluth with notes coming in. We also probably didn't place them right. I meant that kind of as a joke, but for us, the physical limit switch was not working this year. So
I get you. So you were saying for the notes, which I was wondering what
correct.
specific. Yeah. And we use the beam break for notes, but use limit switches for our climbers. So that's why I was just kind of, okay.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I was kind of making an inside joke, even though nobody here gets it. But anyway, that was just an example of a small thing. I agree. Limit switches definitely have their place. So
I didn't think it was a joke at all. We break every limit switch we've ever put on a robot. So you have to be very strategic about it. In fact, I got frustrated with the number of limit switches we were breaking, and so one weekend I catted up a 3D enclosure to protect our limit switches. I'll find it, and it's on the KnightKrawler Thingiverse. I'll go find it and I'll drop it in the Slack. We actually did use it last year. I catted it up and showed the students, and then it sat in a drawer for 2 years. And then one of the students pulled it out and said, "Let's use this." And we actually did use it as a safety switch a couple of years ago, or 2 years ago.
We used the Rev magnetic limit switches this year and liked them a lot. You can keep them out of the way so they don't break when stuff comes slamming down, and worked well for us.
We tried to put a limit switch on our robot this year, and I swear that thing was military grade. You could not depress that thing with a note, no matter how hard you tried to push down on it. It would not break if you threw it on the ground. I don't know where we got that limit switch, but it was impossible to break.
Yeah, it also didn't work for the situation, but
no.
And then I just had another question. It's been, I think, 6 years or so since we've been to state. Any advice about it? I know it's changed a little bit about the night before is a little bit more with getting your robot set up and stuff like that. But any advice? Because it's been a long time since I've been there, and I know we're kind of excited, but we want to make sure that we perform well and kind of get through everything properly.
Get there. It goes really fast, so you're not going to have a lot of practice field. There might not even be a practice field that's worth using. It'll probably be the same. Well, the practice field will only. Well, does anyone else remember? I feel like last year the only practice field we had was because teams brought elements because we didn't have first practice fields, right? So it's hard to say. KnightKrawler has brought some practice field elements in previous years. If wants us to bring a speaker and an amp, I don't know if they can fit that in our trailer with our other stuff. We'll see. But I wouldn't count on anything kind of being worked out on practice field or in practice matches. Like you might see at a regional. You're just not going to have that much time. It's really quick turnarounds because there's only 36 teams as opposed to the 60 you may have seen at 63. You saw 10K or 56 in the other events. So really fast turnarounds. Having a robust robot that is ready to go. I mean, hopefully by this time in the season you have all that, but be prepared for things to go really quick, and you kind of got to be ready from the get-go. If you come planning to work it out while you're there, you might run out of time to do that.
Yeah, that's all I have too. Fast turnaround, fast. I mean, I swear our closest ones, it was like off the field and back on the field within 30 minutes or something. I mean, depending on how the schedule randomness goes. The other thing is, remember only 12 teams play in playoffs. So, I mean, there will be regional finalists and maybe even champions that are not playing in playoffs. And so don't feel bad about that. It's just the way the cookie crumbles. And I know our first time there, it kind of amazed us, like, holy cow, all these teams are going home. But that's just, how it is.
Yeah, and with quick turnarounds too, I don't know what your battery situation is, but I always worry about younger team or lower resource teams that are at state who might only have 4 or 5 batteries and one charger. So if you find yourself in that situation, see if you can borrow a charger from another team or even borrow batteries from a team that isn't going to state, so that you make sure you have enough batteries to get through the day and get through playoffs.
I guess loading in the night before and getting inspected is pretty smooth, really relaxed. It's not, if you've been to a regional at like 10K or whatever it is, there's almost half as many teams, so it's a lot more relaxed, a lot of space, which is nice. But yeah, that's kind of all the things that stand out anyway.
I was just going to say something to Sam's question about a break. I think it depends on the students, and it depends on how they viewed the year as well. Last year, we ended up making it to state, and we took a decent amount of time off after that, partly because we had a lot of seniors graduate, and partly because I wouldn't say we weren't complacent, but we felt like we did what we needed to. And this year, we didn't feel that way when we left Duluth. We felt like we left a lot on the table. And our kids are just like super motivated. I mean, they want to meet twice a week, and I'm saying one, so I just think it depends. And you can always pare it back to one a week, or, take a week off here and there just to give the time that you need. But if the boulder's moving, I'm moving with it. That's the way I usually view it. So.
Yeah, I think that's probably where our team is sitting, where it's like, okay, we have improvement to make. Let's start making it. That's why there's momentum with a good chunk of them, a decent chunk. Not as many as Jaredon would like, but
we're just struggling to find places to put it. Yeah.
And I think the teams that have a lot of excitement and momentum, I mean, there are things that you can do between meetings, right? Especially if you're using Onshape, you can be working on things to 3D print or model, or and then you use your meeting time to go over things and talk about, even if you didn't change your robot, saying, what if we put a turret on our robot? How would we even design a turret for our robot for this year's competition? In thinking that, what if we wanted it for many or MRI or EMCC or any of the other events? How would we do that? I think this is a fantastic exercise for your programmers. I'll just keep going back to April tags all day long, because I think it was our biggest weakness. Was how are we going to do? What if we put on multiple cameras? Let's go find other teams' code. How are they filtering through multiple cameras? How are they using their what are they using for their filtering technique for updating their odometry? How to decide if a tag is a good tag or a bad tag? I think there's lots of things to do there. Our students really wish we'd have gotten to object detection. We didn't do any object detection, but I mean, I would love to give my kids the resources this summer to be able to say, turn the robot on, turn on auto, and just have it hunt and seek down every note that's on the carpet, pick it up and score it. No paths. It's just got to drive to the note, pick it up and score it. If my students could figure out how to do that, holy cow, they would learn a whole bunch of stuff this summer. I don't know that. I don't think that's a realistic auto to actually run in a competition, but that would be a ton of good learning. And it's going to take a lot of research to learn how to do that, and certainly something that would work between meetings over the summer.
I was going to say, it would definitely be a learning opportunity.
I will say one thing I've noticed our team struggles with, just from like a captain's perspective, is getting people to work on robotics outside of robotics. And I understand that we can't expect everyone to do it. Like robotics, it already takes up so much of your time. Why would you spend a lot of your time outside of robotics? But when you like publish like a Google Classroom form where it's like, fill this out if you want to be like, or if you want to apply for captains, or like, who do you think should be a captain? We're trying to get people to fill stuff like that out. We're just not seeing much success with that. Or like, what are ideas for next year? Put it on a Google Doc, like stuff like that. We're just not seeing much success with like robotics outside robotics.
Well, you're not going to pull everybody in the summer. That's not a realistic expectation. But maybe you need to step back. Maybe there might be a reason why your fellow students aren't very excited, and because maybe they're burned out, maybe they feel like they've learned everything there is to learn about robotics. Maybe you need to do something fun. Those the Barbie Jeeps that little kids ride on, they drive around. We turned that into a remote control car one summer. And so we had an RC car that was 3 feet long and 2 feet wide and would jump over, it would go in and out of the ditches and around. You could drive it around the baseball field and in the dirt and do donuts. It was a fun project. And that's something kids are like, yeah, let's make a whole bunch of huge RC cars and set up a huge track. We ended up only making one. We've had talks about making like a whole fleet of them and doing gigantic Mario Kart type RC car racing. But that could be fun. Our students love working on the t-shirt cannon robot. You drive out there in homecoming and you shoot t-shirts into the stands at homecoming or significantly over the stands. And sometimes they get excited about that kind of thing too. So, maybe take the learning out of it. If there's something that kids want to learn how to do, then do that. You guys are up in Coon Rapids. You have a whole bunch of open space. 3D print and launch model rockets. Do something like that. Anything that is fun and different and interesting that kids might want to do. Maybe you need to hide the learning in something that is different and new.
Make it more experimenting and having fun.
Yeah, and that's one thing I was trying to get ideas, like what would people want to do, and people weren't like saying, hey, let's do this, but maybe that's just something I'll need to work on, or I'll need to just, instead of presenting it as a doc, I'll have to present it as like let's sit down for a day and let's talk about over the next 2 months, let's figure out what do we want to work on as a team. But that's not important right now.
We have a little different approach. We have what's called team building, and we have games have absolutely nothing to do with robotics, and just the kids get together and just show up and just play games. I don't know, some of the things they come up with is I haven't even heard of, but it's, as I said, it's a team building rather than have anything at all with robotics, and just get the kids enthusiastic about playing together and learning about each other. So it's a little different thing than the days we work on robotics, but something the kids seem to like.
Eric, it's funny you bring that up. I was actually just going to ask, does anybody do anything completely out for
come back.
team building exercises? Go ahead, Ben.
Oh, I was just going to say that maybe it's really hard to get people to respond to open-ended questions. Maybe like your leadership team should think of what you think is fun, and then just put out a poll. People like that way they have and they get to express an opinion, but they still get input. Just maybe the way you present your information, just something simple like that.
I mean, we also discussed that I think during the summer we'll have weekly or bi-weekly team meetings, and you start out going over what your plans are for the summer and what you're going to be working on, and then the last half of each meeting is just team building, or it has nothing, again, it's just playing games to get to learn, know each other, and that's the last half of the meeting. So it's just built into the sort of the psyche of our team.
Yeah, our team could definitely use more of a sense of community.
I was going to suggest working backwards from team goals too. So, like for us, let's say we one of our team goals is to be more reliable on the field. Well, what does that mean our summer project should be? A way to kind of create buy-in, right? So take your goals for the upcoming build season and work backwards from that. And that maybe you can get some ideas or some buy-in what you want to do. Another approach, maybe.
Okay.
I'll definitely.
Yeah. Great ideas. I really appreciate it. I know this isn't what we were kind of set to talk about today. Was kind of.
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, we ventured on and off, but we talked a lot about summer activities that people do and stuff. And ultimately, if everybody learns something, that's all that matters. It was a great conversation, I believe.
Don't underestimate the value of building relationships with other teams. KnightKrawler hosts a Section 4 picnic every summer. We started it last summer, and we plan to continue doing that. But the idea that you can build a relationship with students from other teams, and then now you've got an Instagram handle or Snapchat or whatever the kids are exchanging, where you can reach out and say, "Hey, are you guys using this thing or that thing, or do you have a Limelight 3, and how are you getting your pipelines configured?" Whatever it might be, it's great when students can do that, and it's not the mentors reaching out to other mentors saying, "Hey, can we come over and get some help?" But the students are actually initiating that. That's a great way to get kids engaged and dig deeper into that community and keep them, interested. So finding another team that's close by and trying to do something over the summer could also be a great way to get students involved when it's not just meeting up and putting two pieces of aluminum together with rivets.
All right, Jeremy, what do you want to plan this summer?
I was gonna say there are no teams close to you, so
Get together with Andover and Blaine.
I don't know. I drive past your school, 50 times a week, probably.
That's 10 a day. I don't know.
I know. I was being sarcastic to the math teacher there.
Gotcha. Sorry.
No, that's not 10 a day. 50 divided by 7 is not 10.
Okay, he was going with a word week. Fairly regularly. I've driven past it a few times this weekend. We'll put it that way.
Does anybody? I had one question. I don't think we're going to do an off-season event this year because I think that's a little too ambitious even for me. Is there a time of year that teams want another one? Like this year, Roseville's at the end of September, Gitchagumi is in July, Woodbury's at the beginning of November, and then Prior Lake's at the end of November. Like, I don't know if anybody has an opinion, but even just planning out not for this fall, but 2025, is there a gap somewhere in there or a different or whatever that people feel like would be doable or no?
I think it's getting really hard because I love, here's the magic word, mini trials so much that I don't want to take away from our mini trials experience. And then when you throw in one or even two off-season competitions, then you build distraction into that, where instead of working in your mini trials robots, you have to take a break and all your students get driver practice for mini or for MRI or we did mini MRI and EMCC last year because mini didn't fit into our schedule. And now with MRI being the end of September, which is traditionally when we would bring in new students. And so I think this year, our very first week, I think the end of the next week was, or the end of that week was Saturday was MRI and so it got really, so we were starting to talk about, we're going to have to start bringing kids in the week after school starts in order to get squeezing all this stuff. So I don't know. I don't think I want another one anywhere. I have a hard enough time trying to handle how we're going to schedule with two. Ultimately, that'll be up to our captains to decide what they want to do and how they want to do it. But we've already started having those discussions because Fire Bears let us know that MRI was going to be really early. And so our captains have already had discussions about how are we going to do this next year and when are we going to have new students join the team.
Is summer off limits? I know other big ones are in the summer. Is that like, I don't know. Again, this is all hypothetical. Like I'm just trying to, even for the small group of people here, gauge any kind of interest, or if it's just not even worth the time.
I think the last time KnightKrawler went to Gitchigumi was 2016 or 2017. I didn't go. But first of all, is Gitch running again? I know they took a couple of years off, but they started again last summer, right?
It is happening this year. And I mean, what about one in the Twin Cities? So like, what if there were 2 in July, 1 in Duluth, I don't know. I'm just throwing.
I'm just not sure what the attendance would be. I think you'd have to do, if you did it in the summer, you'd have to do it early enough in the summer that you could still capture all the alumni who want one last hurrah to go. If you did it beyond the first week of August, I think you'd miss all of your students that are heading off to college, and they're just like, there's no way I can take a weekend to go do this. So I think if you did one in the summer, you'd have to do it early enough in the summer that you would be able to catch your alumni. Otherwise, I think you'd lose too many members of your team that you wouldn't have enough people that would want to go.
One thing we've talked about, and I don't know if anybody's seen it, has anybody seen, Terabytes out in Southern California that does the mini FRC? Is that something people would be interested in? It's quarter-size robots.
Our team is looking at setting up something, at least setting up the infrastructure this year, and maybe looking at doing a competition down the line.
And is this quarter-size robot, is this something you do in the fall?
It would be over the summer. It's kind of a summer project for our team or other teams.
I believe Terabytes does it as a fall thing. And literally you could probably, some of the smaller teams could do 3 robots.
David, are you guys familiar with mini trials?
We have not. No, I'm not familiar with it.
So mini trials is it's a fall competition where they make up the game. Lightning Turtle started it, and Technocrats have sort of taken it over with the help of 2 or 3 other teams. I honestly don't remember the other teams that have been helping, but I know that Jason Herzog was sort of the point person on that. I think also No Mythic was a big part of it last year too. I want to make sure I give credit if I'm remembering everything correctly. But anyway, they designed a whole different game. It's a whole brand new game, and they play on half a field. You are required to use a kit of parts chassis, or if you design a chassis from scratch, there's a price limit. And I forget what the price limit is, but you can't do swerve. It's way too expensive to be under their price limit, unless you were to 3D print everything on the swerve and use, I don't know, bag motors or something inexpensive. So the whole goal of mini trials is that, the way that KnightKrawler runs it, which I think falls into the spirit of the game, is all of our brand new students who've never been on the team before build the robot. Our returning students who are not captains act like captains, and our captains act like mentors, and our mentors walk around and put Band-Aids on people's fingers. And so the whole goal is that you elevate all your students in their roles, and you put brand new students who are the ones that are putting the robots together. 2 years ago was our first time. We built 2 robots, and we had our programming captains do the code because we didn't have any students that had gotten anywhere close to being competent enough in code to program the robots. This year, we did a better job of that, and we actually had brand new students also writing code for the robots. And it was great for training. It was great for training for everything. In fact, our students love it so much. So we absolutely have to do this every year. Our students are way more engaged in the fall because they're actually building real robots and not putting together some test part that we use for tool training, but they're building real robots. It's all hands-on. And then our programmers got through training way, way quicker. We had to restructure our training so that our students could do robot code sooner. But they were much more competent. Our brand new programmers were much more competent by January 1st than they have been in previous years. So it sounds like it's very similar to what you're talking about, but this runs in the fall. The game is released usually the first or second week of September. They release the game manual, and then the competition is usually the week before winter break.
That sounds really interesting. Yeah, I've never heard about that for our team. How would we get involved? Is that just like you individually make your own robots and compete with them on your own?
Well, you make them as a team. You will hear about it a lot in the fall on the Sunday night calls, because we end up last year, actually, Jason hosted the official Q&A on the Sunday night roundtable for mini trials. So if you keep up with the Sunday night calls, it won't be hard to learn about it. But if I go to Chief Delphi, while I'm looking this up, Natasha, you've had your hand up for a while. Why don't you go ahead and then I'll go find the old game.
Well, I was just going to talk about the NMRC Open. There was a question about how full was it this last fall, but we didn't offer it this last fall because it was in Babbitt, and Babbitt was such a long distance to go that we didn't offer it. But it's in Bemidji this coming fall, and I put the sign up in the chat. So it's, first come, first serve. So, but there's plenty of places to stay in Bemidji, and it's really a good time. We're excited about it. And then the STEM Alliance is run by Rory Held, and I did reach out to Rory, I think it was a week or two ago, but I knew he was super busy getting ready for champs. I do know that they're planning on having it again. I just don't know the time frame, but it's usually mid to early August. And that's another real fun one. It's very low key. It's out at the Fargo Fairgrounds, and it's a fun time. So, and it's a great place to get your new kids to just test something out real quickly, for the day, or if you have to spend the night. We tested out new driver. We let everybody drive the robot when we were there so that they could all get their hands on the controls and see what it's like. And all the teams are easy to get along with, and nobody feels like that super, crazy pressure that you might feel in more of a, even though it's a competition, it's a very low key and it's lots of fun.
I threw a link into the chat here. If you Google Hopkins Robotics mini trials, and it's MINNE trials, TRIALS, you'll find the link to it for anybody who's rewatching this on YouTube. But if you go out to Chief Delphi and you search for MINNE trials, you'll find a bunch of links. It used to be called Turtle Trials. That was 2021. 2022, it was called the Test, which it looks like on the thread there, it was still listed as, it was called the Test, but TEST was T period E period S period T period. And you can go out and you can take a look at the different game manuals. They try to use either game elements that were from a previous year, or that was easy to access and find. So we used pool noodles one year. There were the yellow 7-inch balls from Infinite Recharge one year, and then last year they used the wiffle balls from 2018. What the heck was 2018 called? It was Fuel. Steamworks.
Steamworks. Yeah.
Steamworks. They used the wiffle balls that were Fuel from Steamworks, and so I mean, the thing of it is that if you have a robot that can just drive around and push something through a hole in the wall, you probably have a robot that can score in these things. So a lot of plywood, a lot of cardboard, a lot of duct tape. The robots are intended to be ugly and not polycarb, not aluminum, because you're putting these things together with hand tools, and you have brand new students that are making these things. So it's a good way to get kids engaged early and to teach them the basic concepts of stuff, of building a robot and wiring and things like that. We can't say enough good things about it. We love it. It's an awesome, we're so glad that they're doing it, and it's been a big help to our new students.
Yeah, that looks similar, but a little bit bigger scale than what at least terabytes mini FRC is. It's literally like the robots are yay bit fit in your hand. They're quick, easy fields. It's literally what they've done is quarter size previous games.
So do you know what they're using for a control system then? Are they using a RoboReel?
They're actually using Arduinos.
Okay.
Which then brings up the, with Java being such prominent, especially in our area, the challenge there of you can't really necessarily use it as a Java programming tool. They've actually now switched to a bunch of their LMs have gone off and developed their own company supporting it and created their own controller.
I'm Googling now. What was it? It's terabytes, but then what is the name of their game or their program?
Mini FRC. There's actually a link in the chat.
Oh, good.
If you want the company that the alumni started, it's called Alfredo Systems.
Got it.
And it's using their kit of parts, it's $30.
Yeah, I might have to take a look at this. We've been trying to build RAMI robots that teach, because with the RAMI you can do command-based programming in Java. It's a WPI lib analog. So you could actually teach command-based programming. The tricky part about that with the RAMI is that you can only run 5 things. So you've got your 2 drive wheels, but then you can either run a combination of 5 things, which are either servos or they do have PWM, but they have the PWM is the type of PWM where you have to run a PWM signal like an FRC, like a Jaguar or a Talon or something like that, where once you cross the halfway mark on your PWM, it goes in reverse. And no RC car PWM controllers work that way. So if you want to go to Amazon and buy a $3 PWM controller, you can only you have to use up 2 of your PWM slots, one for forward and one for reverse, which now suddenly you're only using, maybe 1 servo and 2 motors. So that's not super helpful when you're trying to teach kids how to run mechanisms. And it turns out that it's really hard to do. So it'd be really nice if you had a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino where you've got 10 or 15 PWM pins on your Arduino and you had access to all of them. But then now you're not doing Java, you're doing C++. And so it's tricky because you want to have a platform for training, but then the platform you really want to be as an analog to what real FRC is.
Yeah,
if you do run a Raspberry Pi, you can. If you do run a Raspberry Pi, you can run Java. Yeah,
but the goal is you want to do command-based programming so that your kids are building subsystems and they're building commands, and you need a looper. And so while a smart developer could build all that stuff and build the platform, someone still needs to do it.
Yeah.
But cool. I mean, I like this a lot. I mean, anything that we can do to get people writing code. I mean, code is code. Once you learn how to write code is code. It's getting past that first step of become a proficient programmer that's tricky.
Yeah, no, we ran across this and it's like, this would be kind of a cool thing. Low investment, literally, small teams could have 3 or 4 teams and have 3 students to a team, learn all aspects. So.
Well, and the other thing about this that triggers my interest here is that we put on demos with a lot of elementary schools, and to be able to bring 5 or 6 of these robots that are all programmed a little bit differently, and you create a game. Maybe you're doing something with ping pong balls, which is what we're doing with the RAMIs or wiffle ball golf balls. To be able to throw a controller into a second grader's hands and say, okay, go see how many balls you can score. That's awesome. That's a great outreach activity. It's a great outreach event. It really gets elementary and middle schoolers excited about robotics. So as much as this could be a way for FRC teams to compete in the off season, I see it as a big opportunity for building an outreach bucket of robots.
Yeah, no, I never thought about it that way, but that's a very good point about it.
I mean, you could do summer camps with this. There's lots of things you could do with this type of thing. All right, we're reaching the end of our time. Does anyone have anything they want to wrap up here?
There has to be.
So, all right. Well, thank you
David,
again, KnightKrawler,
thank
for
you.
hosting these. So,
David, thank you for bringing up this topic. I feel like this was a good topic. This will be a great rewatch on YouTube for teams too, thinking about what to do over the summer or looking for advice on ways they can improve. I think this is a very timely and very informative topic. So thank you for hosting this discussion.
all right. Thank you, everybody, for participating in the discussion. So,
Next week, I just had it up. Darn it. What did I do with next week's? Here it is. Rasmus, who is a frequent attendee of the Roundtable from No Mythic, right? I'm pretty sure he's No Mythic. He's going to give a talk or lead a discussion about how to build a robust, reliable, and maintainable robot. Yeah, No Mythic. So No Mythic is going to share what they've learned over the past few years about building robots that don't fall apart or break at competitions. So that should be a very good discussion, especially coming out of this year where everybody got broken. So look forward to that next week.
Taylor, we should make sure we join that one.
Everybody should join that one. We should
Phil and Jared join that one.
I'll have to send out the email on Thursday next week so that it gives ample time for everyone to forward it to all their friend teams and say, you guys have to be on this call. Yeah. All right. Once again, thank you very much. I know that the sign up form that's out there right now is completely full through the end of April. I have just created a new form for May. I will get that linked on the website. So there will be 4 spots available for May for people to sign up to host a topic. And then we'll have to see what the appetite is for people who may want to go beyond May. But anyway, I'll see everybody next week. Have a good one.